The bridge was neither long nor wide, a simple wooden structure spanning a narrow but deep chasm between the disappointments of the past and an uncertain future. I'll introduce myself. I'm Lyle Jetterman, now 38 years old. A man who used to be distinguished from other men only by being the husband of 36-year-old Gloria and the father of 12-year-old Robert and 8-year-old Anna. A perfectly satisfactory family situation, but with a weighty set of obligations. To fulfill my obligations as husband and father, I worked for Countryman Real Estate for 5 years before Gabriel Zelo bought the company from Bernie Schleifer. Realtor work was not my original profession, or even my preferred choice. I began my working life after graduating from law school. By then, I had been married to Gloria for 3 years. She was pregnant while I was finishing law school. It wasn't a very promising job market for young lawyers, but Gloria's pregnancy gave me a strong incentive to find a job that could support a family. The first job I was offered was with a law firm that specialized in representing banks in home loan closings. It wasn't my dream job, but it was a job. While I was in law school, Gloria worked as a bank teller to support both of us. She earned enough to pay the rent and eat the food on our table. I worked part-time, doing what I could to supplement her income. Loans and scholarships paid for my education, but I pledged my future to the Ministry of Education. When Gloria was already pregnant, I accepted the job offer. It was the first of many concessions to the strictures of married life. In those long-ago days, banks lent money to individual buyers to purchase homes. In retrospect, it was the profession of a gentleman lawyer. I sat at the closing table for the sale of a home and represented the lending bank at the closing of the mortgage loan. The buyer was paying the bank about $500 for my services. The law firm was receiving that amount plus another $500 from the title insurance company. All in all, $1,000 earned each time we shook hands at the end of the home sale. The firm, of course, got the money, and I got a paltry portion of it as a salary. I guess all good things must come to an end, and honest avarice must be replaced by bad and pure greed. All too soon after my wife Gloria gave birth to our second child, the small banks were swallowed up by the big banks, which in turn were swallowed up by the big banks. Retail loans became a thing of the past. Banking became wholesale banking. Everything scaled up to an industrial level. Every morning when I arrived at work, I would find a stack of folders with home equity loans that were to be closed that day. I assumed the profits were huge, but running between rooms with simultaneous home closings was giving me an unsettling feeling that it couldn't go on. During my 7-year legal career, I had progressed not to partnership, but to the distinguished status of private contractor. I earned income on a piecework basis. At $75 per closing, I was making a pretty good income when you consider that I was closing 7 or 8 loans a day, 5 and sometimes 6 days a week. But could it last? I had a nagging sense of impending doom. Bernard Schleifer approached me. Bernie, as he preferred to be called, was looking for what he said was a smart guy with a law degree to work for his company. His main contractor was leaving for the Sun Belt just as Bernie wanted to expand. Bernie's company, Countryman Real Estate, owned the deeds to the Scarlet Woods development. It had 100 approved lots, and the development plan called for 400 more. It was 2 miles from a technology park with an International Foundries chip plant. The plans called for 2,000 high-tech jobs, and Bernie was ready. Schleifer was a builder and developer. He wasn't a salesman or financier for small businesses. If you needed to raise a couple million by selling your development dream to a banker, Bernie was your man. But he couldn't sell a housewife a real stone countertop or her husband a variable rate mortgage. Ironically, when Bernie and I met, it was a perfect match. I loved selling homes, and I was the detail person. It was all that paper shuffling at closing deals. Also, my previous employers had taught me the value of profit centers. I convinced Bernie that he should own his own title company, home insurance agency, movers, gardeners, and so on. We quickly became a full-service agency with a single purpose. Our goal was to sell more houses and get everything we could out of everything associated with them. Bernie started building and doing it very quickly. I ran the office and everything else. Bernie did the big deals and I did the small deals. He was making big money and I was his high-paid employee. He foresaw the collapse. Bear Stearns was the tip of the iceberg. The investment bank Lehman Brothers was the ship that collided with the iceberg. On the day the roof fell in, Bernie was smiling. What goes up must come down, but real estate will always go up again. If we can get through this in acceptable shape, we'll be ready for a big rise. Bernie was betting the market would come back, and he squeezed every last dime out of it, which he then invested in a bigger and better Countryman real estate company. Bernie had only one problem. He was a big fish in a small pond, and he wanted to swim in the ocean. One night, while having a drink after work, he broke the news. "I sold out," he said. "What?" "Calm down. The new owner won't change anything. At least not right away." Bernie was right again. When I met Gabe Zylo, my first impression was of his youth. He wasn't yet 30, and he'd managed to buy Bernie out. He was taller than me in both height and youth, and was a handsome blonde Adonis, the superstar image of the business. I probably should have been jealous of the young man, but he was too charming and affable to take offense. Besides, he was a pleasure to work for. Bernie was a man in his early 50s. He was ambitious, but inherently cautious. Unlike him, Gabe liked to go all out. Everything on the line, all the time. It was obvious from the beginning that the deal to buy Countryman real estate had depleted Gabe's resources. Gabe was more financier than builder, more manager than salesman. He loved fast money, and as the real estate market recovered, his Countryman venture was clearly paying dividends. Bernie was about to fly to Florida, to a big casino to play real estate. I wished him luck the night before he left. "Come with me, kid," he said. "No, because I'm not a kid anymore." "I have a wife and 2 teenagers to support," I said. "Okay, but you might regret it someday." I hoped not, but I checked the job market nonetheless. There wasn't much left of my old firm. Stephen Pender, one of the younger partners, had managed to hold on through the collapse. He was happy to hear from me, but he was paying 1/3 of what I was making now. So I did my best to keep the Countryman afloat. But overall, I was happy working for Gabe, as we called him. He treated me well and let me run the office almost daily. Did I have any doubts about him? Yes, but the only complaint I had about my boss was minor. Bernie never threw a formal company Christmas party. Gabe went to the opposite extreme. He hired one of the most luxurious establishments in the Saratoga resort. True, in the off-season, but still at considerable expense. Employees, contractors, bankers, and realtors gathered for the party, which took place on the first Saturday in December. It was a large, plush party with many guests in attendance. Gabe presided over it like a king. Well, it was his money, and maybe it all had a legitimate business purpose. My discontent started around midnight, but built up throughout the night. I had arrived with the most beautiful woman in the place on my arm. I'd married Gloria right out of college. We were both barely 22. She worked meaningless jobs to support us all while I was in law school. I will be eternally grateful to her for that, but she threw me a pregnancy. Without taking the pill, I was studying for the bar exam. Perhaps in the long run, the pregnancy was for the best. We were good parents and still are. While I was doing home closings, Gloria was raising our little ones and getting her doctorate in child psychology in the evenings. When our youngest child went to school, Gloria went back to work. She found a job with the State Department of Social Services. She also began what I now call her running career. Gloria could be called chubby. She was only fat if you compared her to a starving runway model. But in her 30s, she went from swimming 2 days a week at the YWCA pool and running just for our kids to being a lone, long-distance runner. Every morning, my wife got up early to run 5 miles cross-country. Every evening, she did half-hour sprints. She had the best time of any local female runner. Only nationally ranked female athletes beat her in local 5K and 10K races. She has run the New York City Marathon 3 times, placing in the top 100 women. I'm not a couch potato. I go to the gym at least 3 times a week, and on summer weekends I try to get in a 20-mile bike ride. But I have over 5% body fat, and I don't possess a body that Michelangelo seems to have sculpted. I have supported Gloria in her endeavors. I watched her get up before dawn and come back covered in sweat when she woke the kids. I was proud of my wife. And so when I walked into the Christmas party with this tall, raven-haired beauty in my arms, the conversations died down and people turned to stare at the spectacular Gloria. She was just over 5'2" tall, and her 3-inch heels were just my height. Her raven hair fell to her shoulders. When she ran, she braided it into a ponytail that fluttered defiantly behind her back. That night it shimmered in the ballroom lights. Gloria had done her best for the party. She wore a new black dress. My wife was no longer a chubby little girl. She was a beautiful woman on my arm. Gabe wasted no time in greeting us and taking Gloria out to dance. While I'll admit they were a lovely couple, him taller and stronger than me, his attention seemed to be crossing the line of foul. He crossed it just before midnight by kissing me. I am not a jealous man. Yes, I have a beautiful wife, but I trust her. We've been through a lot of hard times together. Years of law school, raising children, paying off student loans. We've been through illnesses, including a miscarriage. I feel sorry for couples who have never struggled together. I believe it is the hard times that bring you closer together and make your marriage strong. Gloria and I suffered together and loved each other. Gloria had a drink and clearly enjoyed the attention. I decided that was what it was all about. I picked up my wife and took her home. Nothing more was said, and she acted as if nothing had happened. I just had too much to drink, I told myself. 6 months later came Memorial Day weekend. It had been a good half year in real estate. Countryman's numbers were on the rise. The last week of May was the hottest market in a decade. The company's operating account had money piled up from home sales that was due to be transferred on the first business day of June. We checked the checks and transferred the money electronically when the office opened after a 3-day weekend. "Are you coming to camp for the weekend?" asked Gabe. Gabe had rented a cabin in the Adirondack Mountains for Memorial Day weekend. He hadn't talked about anything else for weeks. His invitation was addressed to me and Gloria, but I wanted to avoid it. "I don't know what Gloria's plans are," I said, trying to distract him. "Oh, she's on board. Looking forward to it." I threw him a perplexed look. "We spoke on the phone," he said hastily. Why didn't I believe him? But after he left, I called Gloria, and yes, she was absolutely thrilled. I guess it was the last moment to stop the train wreck. But I just didn't see it. I loved and trusted Gloria. MapQuest clued me in that the trip to Gabe's place was not going to be easy. I drove my Honda Accord to the rental place and checked out the 4-wheel drive SUV. The map said the last 20 miles would be on mountain roads and the last 3 on a dirt road. I'd been to the Adirondacks before. They could prove to be rugged mountains. Gabe's house was located southwest of Saranac Lake. The drive took almost 4 hours. The GPS only checked out for the last 5 miles. We pulled off the county road onto 2 lonely miles of half-empty road, ending in a wooden bridge. The bridge was narrow but looked sturdy. Recently repaired, it crossed a ravine. The gully wasn't very wide, but it was deep. This type of topography is common in the Adirondacks. It is because of the difficult topography that wildlife has been preserved here. I slowly walked across the bridge, wondering if there was another alternate exit, even though the GPS map didn't show one. I felt like a mouse caught in a trap. I wondered if there was a cat nearby. After 3 miles on a dirt road, we pulled up to a 2-story cabin. It was built in a meadow on the side of a mountain, about 1,000 feet below the summit. If you looked north, you could see a dozen Adirondack mountains. We reached a remote spot where what must have appeared to be a rustic cabin was built. I stopped the SUV in a well-maintained parking lot next to 3 similar but much more expensive vehicles. Everything looked new and meticulously maintained. The cabin itself was one of those modern log structures that just look rustic. It's modern architecture with traditional cladding. A large, comfortable modern building pretending to be a 19th century mountain retreat. The impression was rich. Gabe had once again gone overboard to impress. I had no doubt who he wanted to impress, and it wasn't me. They met us on a wide porch with Adirondack chairs and accompanying decor. There were 6 of them in all. 3 young men, Gabe, and 2 of his college friends. Ken Lewis was the shortest, about 5 feet 10 inches, but built like an athlete. He, like Gabe, was in his early 20s. Ken was beginning to bald, and his face wasn't as handsome as Gabe's, but physically he was pumped up with muscles that showed through his tight t-shirt and shorts. His second college buddy was Glenn Sachs. About 6 feet tall, lean build with curly blonde hair, he looked better than Ken. He stood, hugging the blonde woman tightly. She was introduced as Sharon. She was a pretty woman with curves and a large bust. She was at least 30, maybe more. 8 to 10 years older than Glenn. A slightly younger woman named Robin stood next to Ken and clearly with him. She was a short, plump brunette in her 30s, very well built. The last person at the party was a tall woman with long blonde hair. This was Paula Henry, and she was one of those women who, for lack of a better word, could be called beautiful. Definitely a woman with attractive but sharp, not quite feminine facial features. Her look said she was smart. She knew it, and so did you. Of all the women, she was clearly the youngest, and was the boys' school friend. Everyone was very friendly and overly happy that we were doing this. But the whole greeting was out of order. Gabe clearly greeted my wife as an afterthought, and his friend Paula looked at me the way one looks at a lab animal before dissecting it. Dinner was in store for us. So we quickly took our bags to our assigned room on the second floor. Our small room was next to the master bedroom that Gabe occupied. We all took seats in the living room. The huge living room, dining room, and game room measured 40 by 40 feet. Here, at a large oak table, we ate microwave-packed gourmet lunches. The food was delicious, but inexpensive. Wine was provided in huge quantities. I monitored my drinking as much as possible when the host is trying to constantly refill your glass. After dinner, all this friendly company went to sit around the gas fire on the terrace. That's where the hard liquor came into play. Apparently, this was a weekend devoted to drinking. Through careful questioning and keen observation, I began to examine my situation. At first glance, I was on an ordinary holiday weekend with my boss, 2 of his friends and their female companions. However, it turned out to be much more complicated than that. It only took a few minutes to find out that Robin had a fiancé somewhere, but not here, and Sharon was married with 2 children and a husband at home. Sharon and Robin worked together and were allegedly at a girls-only weekend health spa together. The cheating was treated casually and with humor. And Paula kept her eyes on me and seemed like she didn't fit in with this group. You'd think she was with Gabe, but she didn't take offense to the fact that he was openly flirting with my wife. In fact, he sat between Gloria and Paula for most of the evening. Gabe continued to talk mostly to Gloria. My attempts to engage Paula in conversation were met with only polite interest. She was sending me signals not to try to start anything. Toward midnight, I sensed that the party members were ready to retire to their bedrooms to complete the evening's festivities. But they were waiting for something. Suddenly, Gabe turned to me and said, "Lyle, you must be tired after the long drive." "Yes, dear. Why don't you head to bed and I'll join you in a little while," my Gloria said. "Hell, not before I have another drink," I said, grabbing the bottle. "Unless you save it, Gabe." I smiled at him, but inwardly cursed this pig who was trying to seduce my wife. I also wondered what Gloria was playing at. She sat up with him all night like she was at a Christmas party. Maybe she was in love? Did my 16-year-old wife really have a crush on my boss? It was a waiting game, but I won it. Eventually, Gloria retired with me to the bedroom. And the morning light shining through the loose shutters of the large bedroom window woke me up. Gloria usually got up long before me to go for her morning jog, but her excessive drinking the night before had taken its toll. I pulled the blinds shut, getting out of bed and heading into the small bathroom with a shower stall. It was a small bedroom, but its amenities were more than adequate. I showered, shaved, and went downstairs before anyone else. I decided to survey my surroundings before the others got out of bed. I went from the living room to the patio with a fire pit and built-in barbecue. The patio transitioned into an elevated area that held a small pool and sauna. In the springtime in these cold mountains, open water seemed like a risky proposition. But as I stepped out onto the deck, I realized that the entire complex was heated. The higher mountainside was covered with solar panels. Thus the pool and probably the house was heated. Walking across the deck, I came to a small barn. There were no animals in it, but it was filled to the brim with ATVs, snowmobiles, and gardening equipment, including several small tractors. As I walked past this building, I heard a small creak in the distance. The creek flowed about 20 yards from a locked barn with a small chimney in the roof. Looking through the only small window, I saw a generator and jugs of fuel. Gas for sports nutrition and a generator were stored here for emergencies. Someone had thought of everything. This place was an isolated world in itself. It was obviously prepared for any eventuality. The creek was small and shallow. I thought it was too small for fish until I saw one jump out of the creek. "Are you catching fish?" came a voice from behind me. With surprise, I turned around and saw Paula standing behind me. "No, but I used to catch when I was younger and had more time." "That's a shame, but it'll give you something to do this weekend." "Do you fish?" "No, neither do you. No time. How about breakfast and a walk up the mountain?" "Somehow I hate to come all this way and not make it to the top," she said. Paula set the coffee brewing in the stainless steel coffee maker. The kitchen pantry was stocked with ready-made breakfasts cooked in the microwave. I, like my companion, opted for instant oatmeal. No one else got up. "I guess they'll all sleep late. How about that walk?" she said, smiling. Paula obviously knew where the trail started because she led us right up to it. The summit didn't seem that far away, but after an hour it seemed just as distant to us as when we started. "Are you sure you want to go to the top?" I asked. "Why? You'll be exhausted, old man," she replied. "Just wondering what the others will think when they don't find us." "Don't worry. I doubt our absence will cause concern." We finally made it to the top, and judging by the fact that the sun was almost directly overhead, it was close to noon. The top of the mountain was a little disappointing. It was a fairly level area with rounded edges. 2 old wooden benches were set up overlooking the lodge to the east, and the collection of peaks to the south and east. A haze clouded the distant view, though the air seemed crisp and clear. A cool breeze blew in the middle of the day, but nothing unpleasant. My companion sat back in his chair, clearly determined to enjoy the view. "Do you mind?" she asked. "I'd like to rest before the trip down." "No, an old man could use a break," I said. That made me smile. "So Glenn's a broker, Ken's a banker, and Gabe's a real estate developer, but we talked all night and I never heard what you guys do?" She gave me an appraising look. Apparently decided she shouldn't. "I'm a regulator. I work for the government, low paid and very boring," she said. "Have you ever regulated anyone we know?" "Oh, not lately. When we were in college, I had to help guys all the time. You know, cover for them from an angry girlfriend or provide them with cheat sheets for exams. They were always on edge. That's what makes them who they are. You know, exceptional young people." "So that's your job? You cover for them?" "What's the use of closing the barn door when the horse has already run out? It won't help get the horse back in. Regulations only hold things back. It's better to let the smart people get help and let the rest of us be pushed aside to make room. In the end, it's better that everyone benefits according to their merit." "So what are you going to do this weekend? You didn't seem keen on partying last night," I said. She paused, as if the question had caught her off guard. I stood up and stepped aside where I could see the road leading down the mountain. There were no other roads, only the only way out. I turned around and looked intently at Paula. Had she thought about it? The others, as I realized in a gestalt moment, were completely blind to everything but their own physical appetites. And her? Obviously, she was looking. Must she see the problem the same way I do? I'm just here as the designated teetotaler, I guess. Making sure everything goes well. Making sure nothing bad happens. Any problems go to the back of my mind. I don't want to get involved unless absolutely necessary. You mean unless the Golden Boys need you? I don't think I'd put it that way, but surely you realize that what's best for them is best for everyone in the long run. Shall we go back downstairs? Asked I. What's the hurry? The way back would be quicker. Yes, fast, but steep and possibly dangerous. You could take a big fall. Why worry when you're at the top? She said, got up and started down. We made it to the lodge without incident, but my bad vibes intensified. We found the others by the pool. My wife was in a black bikini I'd never seen before. The other women were no better. As Paula and I walked over, I saw my wife sitting on Gabe's lap and giving him a kiss. We're back, Paula called out, causing Gabe and Gloria to break the kiss. Gabe was grinning like a bad boy who got caught stealing cookies, but he knows he won't be punished. My wife's smile was too wide and obviously fake. Hey, where have you been? She said, as if she was talking to some random acquaintance. An awkward silence hung after that. I felt my fists clench. But then Paula grabbed my arm. Well, we obviously missed lunch, and since we climbed to the top of the mountain, we deserve some food, Paula said, dragging me toward the lodge. I heard muffled laughter as we left the pool. I didn't know what Paula had made to eat. If I did eat, I don't remember. She made me drink a Johnny Walker Black. It was straight and burned my throat. Think before you act, she said. It's just one weekend in a good marriage, and you have a family to think about. When we returned to the pool area, the couples had already retired to the hot tub. The men were laughing, the women giggling. My wife was still lying on Gabe's lap. Paula took a seat from where she could watch from and positioned herself between me and the hot tub. I defiantly took another drink and then abruptly stepped back. I tossed the drink away as I disappeared from sight. I wandered around the grounds of the lodge, checking out the layout of everything. Killing time and dreading the thought of where this was going. Realizing that eventually I would have to fully master my abilities. I headed to our bedroom, consciously forcing myself to try and sleep. As I lay there trying to calm my thoughts, the question of why my wife of 16 years was flirting and making out with another man kept me awake. We had been through so many difficult times together. Early poverty, children's illnesses, endless attempts to make ends meet on a middle-class budget. We were just beginning to climb toward a safe and comfortable place. The children had reached the age where they could take care of themselves. My wife had a good, albeit modest, career. I was now making good money after so many unhappy years. Our debts were under control and the future was bright. Why throw it all away for a superficial and vain man like Gabe Zylo? There was nothing beneath the charm and brazen bravado. There was nothing behind the flashy exterior. Gabe had never developed a site plan, built a house, or made sales. He was the head of a business run by others. He was a money man, a rich kid, a prodigy from nowhere whose only asset was the image he created for himself. What was Gloria thinking? She said she just wanted to have fun this weekend. So was it fun, and how did it end? I dozed off, and when I came back down the stairs, they had already moved into the great room. Dinner must have already passed. The booze was still pouring down in rivers. Gloria found herself on Gabe's lap again. There wasn't a hint that they weren't kissing. I walked across the room and headed to the kitchen for food. I was cooking dinner in the microwave when Gloria walked in. "What's up?" she asked. "I've been feeling better," I replied. She seemed to hesitate, then said, "I'm spending the night with Gabe," she said. "I noticed," I said, as the microwave beeped. She smiled oddly as I turned back to the microwave. "No, I mean, I'll be in his room tonight." I remained very calm. I stood with my back to her. It was important that she didn't see the pain she was causing me at this moment. "I see, and our 16 years of marriage? That's why I can do it. It's just for the weekend. Next week I'll be all yours again," she said. Oh, and Gabe won't mind. She wrapped her arms around me from behind, burying her head in my back. Of course not, silly. Gabe likes you. He says you two are going out together. It's just a fling. A little weekend fun. Okay, she said, putting her arm around me. Do I have a choice? I asked. Not really. It's already decided. I'm just telling you to let you know, she said. She let go of me, and I heard her walk out of the kitchen. I walked over to where the kitchen led out into the great room. They were already at the stairs. As they were going up, Gabe looked back. He grinned and gave me a thumbs up, like we were in on it. He said something in Gloria's ear, and she turned and waved and smiled at me. I turned back toward the kitchen. Apparently, everything we'd been through together meant nothing. My wife had abandoned and humiliated me. I threw the food out of the microwave. Instead, I made coffee. It was going to be a long night. As the water boiled, I heard someone enter the kitchen. Turning around, I saw Paula watching me. I didn't expect it to be caffeine. Wouldn't alcohol be more appropriate? She said. To each his own, I said. But tell me, what is your function here? She shrugged in response. I try to help, making sure things stay calm. And how are you going to do that? Sleep with me. She laughed. No, I don't go that far, but don't get discouraged. You'll get your wife back and maybe a bonus. So, I said, there's money involved. Not always. You can't hustle because you work for a man. You have a family to think about. What can you do but accept what they give you? It's their world, not yours. That's just the way it is. Sounds like she's having a good time, Paula said, grinning. Well, that's fine. A nice weekend for everyone in the mountains. You know, those rocks have been here a long time. Our existence is just a blip to them. Thousands of years ago, they were covered in a thick layer of ice that brushed them off and cut through the streams and gorges we must now traverse to make our world livable. We sometimes forget how precarious our existence is. One small piece is worth taking away, and our world collapses. Only then do we see what an illusion it is. Paula laughed. My goodness, you're a philosopher. No, just a person who is conscious enough to realize what's important, trying to separate the real and eternal from illusions. She must have decided I wouldn't cause trouble and left me alone with my coffee and my pain. Around 1 o'clock in the morning, I walked up the stairs. As I passed the door to the bedroom, I heard my wife. I took a shower, then changed into my warmest clothes. It was going to be cold outside. While waiting, I tried to ignore the noise coming through the walls. It was past 3 in the morning when the house was finally quiet. I waited another 30 minutes, then crawled downstairs. In one of the kitchen cabinets, I found a flashlight and candles with matches. A necessary precaution, I thought, in case the electricity was cut off by harsh reality. The night was truly dark. The moon had already set. The night sounds of the mountains could be heard, but to a city dweller, they seemed silent. I had no trouble finding the shed and the 20-gallon plastic jerry can that brought fuel for motorsports. I also found a wrench. There was a padlock hanging on the generator shed door, but the hinge mechanism was rusted through. The wrench solved that problem. The owners of the cabin provided a good hand siphon for pumping gasoline. It didn't take 10 minutes to fill the canister with gasoline. It took a few more minutes to walk around the lodge building and to the spot where my rented SUV was parked. I poured gasoline into the back, removed the handbrake, and put the truck in drive mode. I let it drive down the road as far as it would go, after which I started it up and drove off. As I approached the bridge, I dropped my speed. I carefully drove over it. When I pulled onto the gravel road, I stopped. I took my time and made sure the gasoline had soaked into the wood of the bridge. It was a well-made and sturdy structure. It was something carefully crafted, the work of skilled builders, craftsmen making things. Wealthy people had installed the bridge so that those who lived off the sweat of others could have a fun weekend. The fun had to end. I dropped the match. It hissed, then caught fire. A finger of flame rose as I stepped back. A roaring explosion of heat and fire soon followed. I heard the crackle of the bridgewood as it caught fire. The flames must have been visible from miles away. I turned to my car and drove slowly. There was no need to hurry. Everyone who could see was now trapped on the other side. I was sure I would be far away before they realized their position. About the time dawn broke, I pulled off the highway to get gas. I filled up the SUV and left the empty canister at the pump. Someone would find it. With it, the only link between the fire and me was gone. I turned in the SUV around 9 in the morning and picked up my car. I showered again and dressed businesslike for the office. I had 2 more small things to do to finalize my association with Countryman Real Estate. Bernie was a good boss, but forgetful. He would often call me to fetch something he had forgotten in his office. I had a key to every door and every file cabinet. Gabe was a neat and meticulous man when it came to his office and personal belongings. He had a big new mahogany desk with a built-in safe. Unfortunately for him, he kept the combination in a folder labeled safe. It was in a locked cabinet, but I had the key, thanks to Bernie. 20 minutes after entering the Countryman office, I retrieved the diary with the password from Gabe's safe and logged into the company accounts. It would have been easy to walk away with everything, but that wasn't my plan. Stealing would get me nothing but jail time. I simply transferred the money from the operating account to another account. When I first started Countryman, we opened a trust account for deposits. With each new construction, a new trust account was opened. It was a state requirement. The original trust account was long forgotten about. The old account was in the records, but it was no longer on the books. It was an empty account until I transferred almost $20 million into it. I transferred all of our cash into it and, for extra convincing, maxed out the line of credit. My actions may seem like an empty gesture. Nothing was stolen. Everything was still in place. But it would take a few days to find and recover that money. Early Tuesday morning, electronic fund transfers hit an empty transaction account. Hundreds of payments hadn't gone through. I wasn't sure how big the damage would be, but we always borrowed more from banks than we had. We existed on credit. Take away that credit and times would get tough, at least for a while. Countryman will have to work hard to restore his good reputation. The longer the deficit lasts, the more serious the problem will be. With any luck, Gabe will still be on the mountain on Tuesday. I won't be, because my next action after putting everything in place will be to write my resignation letter. I was about to leave the office, placing my resignation letter on Gabe's secretary's desk, when my cell phone rang. I looked at my phone. Gloria's picture appeared on the screen. I ignored the call. A moment later, the phone went to voicemail. I shouldn't have listened, but I did. "Baby, where are you? They say the car's gone. I'm worried. Call me," my wife said. About half an hour later, the phone rang again. It was Gabe. "Hey, Lyle, are you okay, buddy? Gloria's really worried. Give her a call. Right now." I caught a little threat at the end. It brought a smile to my face. That Sunday, there were 3 more calls from Gloria and a second from Gabe. In the second call, he was more threatening, demanding that I call him back. Monday morning, I went to pick up the kids from Gloria's parents. As I was on my way out the door, Gloria called again. "Lyle, I'll be back tonight. We need to talk. If you get this message, please call. I'm really worried. This is childish," she said. I was sure she wasn't coming back. When I arrived at her parents' house, they were already waiting for me. "Gloria called and said you could come alone to pick up the kids," her mother said. "You need to call her son," her father said. "She said she'd be back tonight. I think it's best if I wait until then. We have some things we need to work out in person." I wasn't going to get into a discussion with my in-laws if I could avoid it. My in-laws were not happy, but there was little they could do. My daughter caught on that something was wrong, but I told her, "This is an adult problem between Mom and me, and to be fair to her, we should wait until she comes home to discuss it." Once the kids were home and settled, I went to the room that used to be our bedroom and called Felix Rodriguez. "Hey Lyle, how's it going?" he said back. Not so good, Felix. I need your services, I said. Felix was the best family lawyer I knew. He was good both as a lawyer and as a person. Oh, what's the problem? He said, I need to file for divorce. No way, you shouldn't joke about such things. Gloria had an affair with Gabriel Zilo, with my boss. Shit. I'm really sorry about that. What do I need to do? Felix and I discussed it on the phone for about an hour. I set up a meeting for late Tuesday night to get into action. The calls kept coming from the mountain. Apparently, her parents were calling. The messages were conciliatory. Gloria was alternating with Gabe. No threats. Hey, kid. If I made a mistake, I apologize. I don't want what happened this weekend to affect our working relationship. That would be bad if you know what I'm getting at, he said. Then around 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Lyle, please call. Something's happened here. The bridge isn't working. We're all trapped. Make the call. I need to hear from you, my wife said. First thing Tuesday morning, I called Stephen Pender, my old colleague. We agreed to meet for lunch at a modest sandwich shop in one of the malls. Are you sure about this? Asked Stephen between bites of a tuna and pepper jack sandwich. I'm already sure. I've officially resigned, I said. As if to emphasize this fact, I got a call from Donna, my secretary at Countryman. Lyle, they say you've resigned, but you need to come in. There's a hell of a lot going on here. Something is very wrong, Donna said. Sorry, it can't be helped. I don't work there anymore. I suggest you call Gabe. They say he's stuck in the mountains. Something about a bridge. I'm sorry to hear that. Well, don't worry about it. I'm sure things will work out eventually. Something I should know about? Asked Steve. No, nothing that worries me anymore, I said. Well, if you're sure, I think I can improve my last offer by $10,000 a year. If you can get started right now. Isn't tomorrow too soon? No, that would be great, Steve said. I started at Pender & Associates on Wednesday morning. I was just getting settled in on Wednesday afternoon when a visitor came to see me. Where's my money, you freak? Gabe Zilo said. What money are you talking about? You know, the operating funds. Excuse me, perhaps you should talk to the company accountant. If I do, I'll prosecute you for embezzlement, he said. I only smiled at him. He had found a way out of this mountain, but where were the operating funds? You think you're some wise lawyer, but you're just an asshole who can't satisfy his wife. She was very happy with me, he said, and walked out. The next day I got word from the police. They called and asked me to come to the station to answer some questions. Excuse me, I have just started a new job. My time is very limited, but feel free to put your questions in writing and I will get back to you. The officer on the phone tried to explain that this was not their custom, but I immediately explained that I am a lawyer and I do everything in writing or not at all. We chatted for a few minutes and then he hung up. I knew the police would have to confirm the embezzlement charge before they could act. That would mean tracing the money. I expected that within a few days they would find it in the company account where I had deposited it. That would be the end of the case. After that, it would just be a civil case, and a shoddy one at best. I was wrong. It took them 2 weeks to find the missing funds. By then, the Countryman was in very serious trouble. The banks had completely shut off access to its credit, and it needed an injection of new capital to get back up and running. Gloria showed up late Friday night with our luggage. Her key didn't work because I had changed the locks. I met her at the door. She didn't look well. Please, Lyle, let me in. If not for me, then think of the kids, she said. No, I won't let you in because you don't live here anymore. I parked your car on the street. I assume you still have the car keys, I said. Do you hate me that much? Yes, I said, and closed the door. I decided that she would drive to her parents' house. There, Felix would serve her with a restraining order and a divorce petition. Those few days of grace that Bridge gave me paid big dividends. Felix forbade her from molesting me, and I got temporary custody of the kids. It took her 2 months and probably all the money she could scrape together to recover. By then, the divorce had already taken place, and all we had to do was settle the details. Gabe Zylo wasn't so lucky. Countryman Real Estate was forced to close its doors. It ceased operations just after Labor Day. The following week, I had a visitor. He was sitting in my visitor's chair as I returned from my third closing of the day. He was deeply tanned and looked quite healthy. He was a little underdressed for the early northern fall that had set in. "Bernie, how are you doing?" said I. "Good," he replied, craning his neck to look around my meager office. "What brings you to the cold north?" I asked, sensing this was no casual visit. "Well, that's just it. Florida is teeming with sharks, and very few of them are in the water. I thought I'd better go back to what I know," he said. "Huh? I guess it's good to have you back," I said, not knowing what else to say to his admission or what he wanted from me. Bernie could read the question in my eyes. "I dropped a decent chunk of change in there. I'll have to start over and start small, but I guess I got lucky. The company I used to own seems to be free," he said, and a smile appeared on his face. I looked at him and smiled back. "Yes, it is, isn't it?" We both burst into laughter. "So what do you want from me, old pirate?" I said. "Well, roughly the following. I want a partner. At my age, bankers think that any business I start won't be followed through, and you and I make a good team. What do you say?" "I have very little money. I'm going through a divorce, you've probably heard," I said. "Yeah, I've heard," he said. I wondered how much he had heard. The story went round and round. "Look, why don't I give you 10%, he said. 50? Be reasonable. You just said you don't have any money to invest." "I bet you don't either. But I'll settle for 45%, I said. "Look, 25% is fair. But it's not enough. 40% and the option to buy another 10% in 10 years. "Okay, I hope I live that long," said the man I knew was going to attend my funeral. Bernie and I went back into business. We bought all the Countryman lots at a discount from the banks who now owned them, using money from the same bank. I thought we were in for a rough ride, but soon we were in a very steady business, building and selling houses. Life went on, and so did my divorce. It was mostly a custody battle and dating. Eventually, we worked out a complicated agreement for joint custody and visitation. That's why I would come home on Christmas Eve to a dark and empty house. The kids were at Gloria's on Christmas Eve. They were supposed to be at my house on Christmas Eve. Since Christmas fell on a Sunday, they had to go back to her on Monday when she had the day off. The children hated that kind of routine. As I approached the house, I saw a figure sitting on the steps. They were shaded from the cold and falling snow. Before I knew it, I recognized my ex-wife. "Gloria, what are you doing here?" said I. She didn't look her best. She was even skinnier than the last time I'd seen her, and her eyes looked empty and devastated. She had clearly been crying lately. "I want to go home," she wailed. "Where are the children?" I demanded, ignoring her pleas. "With my folks. They want to come home too. We want to be a family again in our little home. What you did to us is unfair." "I didn't do anything." "Oh yes, you did. I made a mistake. Sure, it was a bad and hurtful mistake, but it was just one mistake." "You're the one who ruined our family," she accused, anger rising in her voice. She made an effort on herself to calm down. "I told myself I wouldn't lose my temper, but please understand, I have anger issues over this," she said. "You have anger issues?" I was flabbergasted. "Don't play innocent. You're not like that at all. You just happen to be ahead of everyone else? I'm not a fool, Lyle. You've never been a saint. I know I hurt you, but that was never my intention." "Do you really expect me to believe that you thought having sex with another man right in front of me wouldn't hurt me?" I said. She looked away. My words had obviously hurt her deeply. I saw her wiping her eyes with her hands, even though she was now standing with her back to me. It was evident that she was crying. Her voice was low and pain-filled but steady. "I was always the fat girl, the last one asked to dance. I had to go along with whoever asked. I was a good girl, so I spent a lot of time fending off rude attacks. I waited for the right man all through high school and almost all through college. When I met you, I knew I had found the right man. When we got married, I was a virgin. I didn't make a fuss about it, but I thought you knew. You're not a prince now, and you certainly weren't then. You were just a regular guy, but I loved you with all my heart. Yes, you were a little smarter than most and more ambitious, but we were always broke. I learned to live with lowered expectations because I loved you. It hurt me to see you struggling so hard. Then Gabriel came along and things seemed to get better. He was everything a woman wants in a man. For once, the prince wanted me. It was flattering. After the Christmas party, he kept calling me. It wasn't serious, just flirting. You know, the kind of thing beautiful women get all the time. Not that I wasn't being hit on, but not the beautiful, powerful elites. He said nice things about you and how lucky I am to have a great guy like you. I bet he just loved the hell out of me, I said. Loved you. He told me how hard you worked and how he wanted to reward you. I knew he was saying that if I was nice to him, he'd take care of you. I guess I let him convince me that you will win if I give in to him. That's true, but so was the fact that I wanted him. It was like there was this crazy buzzing in my head that was pushing me toward him. I was flitting between hoping that something would happen that weekend and fearing that it would. Once we got there, all my resistance started to weaken. I turned to you. I turned to you. I asked you to... What? Are you kidding me? You told me you were going to bed with him. Okay. I didn't say it outright, but you knew what was going on and you didn't say no, she said, turning to me. Tears were running down her cheeks and dripping from her chin. It was dripping from her nose. I believed in you. Like I said that night, we'd been together for 16 years. How could you do that to me? I said. But that's the thing. We were in love with each other. It was just an affair. Nothing compared to what we had before and will have afterward. Are you crazy enough to believe that after hearing you scream with pleasure for him that we could have something together? Oh shit, you can't be that stupid. It was all an act. I wanted to be good for him. I put on a show. Men like that, they need it and expect it. I never act like that in bed, and you should know that after 16 years of making love to me. I only know what you did. How you humiliated me. You put the golden boy above me. The asshole who contributes nothing and takes everything. Powerful, huh? So where is he now? What happened when the crisis hit? I'll tell you. He folded. We live in a society that supports the few over the many, based on the myth of some secret genius they possess. Tell me, how was this genius able to get down the mountain so quickly? He called for a helicopter. By then, he already knew you had done something to the business. It was pretty obvious you had burned the bridge. He figured you had stolen his money. The others started to panic. Paula kept saying it couldn't be, that it couldn't be. When the helicopter arrived, there was only room in it for Gabe. The rest of us were abandoned. I think the National Guard eventually set up a temporary bridge to save us. Sharon and I drove back together. By then, her husband knew the whole truth. She was in trouble, just like me. Poor Robin's fiancé broke off their engagement. Glenn and Ken were in trouble too, but I think with Paula's help they pulled through. I think it was just Gabe and us regular people who really bore the brunt. But isn't there enough pain? She asked, looking at me hopefully. There was a lot of truth in Gloria's words. I wasn't completely innocent. I'd worked for Gabe, but unlike the others, I'd never been taken in. I knew the truth, but I refused to admit it to myself. I can't forget how everything happened. They have nothing but false promises. If you look hard enough, you can see the trap. But no one looked. Illusion is much better than reality. We've been through some tough times, but they've gotten better. You and Gabe took away the security of my home. I can never get that back because those bastards proved that everything I believed in was an illusion. You and I were an illusion, I said, as I stood up and headed for the door of the dark and desolate house. She didn't give up. Answer me this, she said. Are you better off alone, without me? Or are you better off with me and our kids around the Christmas tree tonight? I looked at her. It would have been so easy to put her in my arms, love her, bring the kids home to sleep in their own house on Christmas Eve, and pretend that what had happened had never happened. But all I could say was, I don't know. That's a good question, but I don't have an answer for it. With those words, we turned away from each other. What was in our past cannot be changed. We must live for our future. The end. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. So subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.